Welcome back to Fandom Empire Live. I am Sean. I'm joined tonight by my former partner in crime, or still partner in crime, and we just don't do many of these alone anymore. And I don't think the whole thing will be alone. I think we're going to be joined by a couple of guests during this, but couldn't do it without him on the day where a new Star Wars trilogy has been reported by basically now every major outlet out there, and then Simon Kinberg now confirming it himself. Yeah, we got a new Star Wars trilogy, so we have Tommy B in the house. What's going on, buddy?
Hey there, man. I'm hanging in there, having a halfway decent day today. How about you?
I didn't have Simon Kinberg Star Wars trilogy on the bingo card for things going into the weekend.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It definitely one of those things that was surprise announcement.
Yeah, well, to be clear,
Surprises
Yeah,
abound.
yeah,
Yeah.
Lucasfilm has not announced it, nor has Disney. It was reported at first by Deadline, followed up by the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, all those major outlets. And since Simon Kinberg has shared those reports on his Instagram, so it's as official gets. Um,
You may remember that I found out about this when you sent me an audio message today telling me, I don't think we're doing that other plan we had. We're going to instead do a Fandom Empire Live. And you say it's for this announcement. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So then I start Googling, and that's how I found out. And I don't know. I guess surprising doesn't quite cover it. But we'll get into that, right?
yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. Okay, I have like my hand of cards, if you will, are firmly placed in a certain square on this one. Um, I've already decided how I feel about this. Um, and I'll get to that later on. But dissecting it for what it is, you'll get people that will now go online and bash this just for the sake of bashing it. They're the haters that will, no matter what Star Wars does moving forward, it will never, ever, ever be for them again. So moving that group aside from this, looking at it for what it is, we're now getting a confirmed in development trilogy, regardless if that's episodes 10, 11, and 12 or a new start on something else. Years after Kathleen Kennedy had said, "We are done making movie trilogies." That's a direct quote from Kathleen Kennedy. And I'm not saying I'm upset with it, because I'm not, but I feel like we're kind of going in circles here. And I feel like she's just a sports GM, Tommy, if they kept making the same decision or same mistake over and over and over again, would lose their job, which is how I'm choosing to look at this head of Lucasfilm position. And she has not lost her job yet. She's never been the one to fall on the sword, right? She's always escaped punishment, if you will. Um, so to now revert back to this decision to get into the business of making movie trilogies, it's kind of a double edged sword for me. I'm excited at the possibility of what it could be and the person they hired, but I'm not excited that Kathleen Kennedy once again is getting a shot at something like this.
I mean, Kathleen Kennedy, she's only like what, one or two steps away from retirement, right?
I
So,
mean, is she?
good question. Hard to say. I mean, if I had the type of her the figures her salary comes with, and for as long as she did, it would be no question. But we don't think the same way that somebody in that position does now, do we? Um, I any announcement that comes out today, I look at in an extremely skeptical manner until I start to see something that's a little more substantial. We're talking a teaser, a trailer, something. At that point, it's all fluff, uh, prospects. It's not definitive that it's even going to come out. We've been let down so many times, pre Disney era and Disney era, that I tend to be a negative Nancy with most announcements, and that includes this one. What do you have to say about that?
I say you're a negative Nancy.
Yeah,
Uh,
just what I just said.
um, no, I like they have 100. They being Lucasfilm have 100% earned the skepticism of the fan base over any announcements like this. Like this should be a celebratory day for Star Wars fans. And I'll point out the reasons why in a bit. And I'm not saying it's all getting shit on, it's about 50-50, but that's what you're going to get with this franchise moving forward. You know, I can't think of a dream project that brings most of the fans back together. Um, and like they did it to themselves. So it's hard to feel bad for it, really. Just taking a look at the chat here. Talking Star Wars says, I agree with Tommy. I need to see something to believe it's happening. I'm I agree with that. You know, make no mistake, the guy goes and shares it on his Instagram. It's happening, but there's a difference between, he's writing it and developing it and oh, here we are, there's a cast and we're rolling, we're shooting, we're actively filming. They have a really hard time getting to that point, specifically in this new era.
And I don't
Dustin,
understand why that is, because it's not that these projects are without hype. Many people jump right on the bandwagon. Somewhere along the line, something that I don't think we understand happens. And when that happens, it all falls out the window, right? Like and eventually it gets canceled. You lose staff and it gets canceled. Has that happened officially with the Ray movie yet?
so I'm going to tie that into what Dustin says here. Also, is it connected to the Skywalker saga? Isn't that done? With the Ray movie being the continuation, I want something in a different time, many, many years later, or set in a different part of the galaxy. Daisy Ridley recently said there was going to be some Star Wars news soon that would excite a lot of people pertaining to Ray. I think what we're going to find out, and again, could be wrong here, but I think the stars are aligning, if you will. I think what we're going to find out is that the Ray movie is movie one of this trilogy, and that Simon Kinberg came in and took over, and Stephen Knight is gone, and the director's probably gone, and I think that is where this is going, keeping in mind that originally that Ray movie was supposed to take place 15 years after um, the Rise of Skywalker, and also be like a uh, soft reboot slash relaunch of the Jedi Academy series from Legends, but with Rey instead of Luke. Um, I could see that being those movies.
The Jedi Academy era, that whole post Return of the Jedi era is one of my favorite parts of Star Wars lore. It would be amazing to see something like that come to fruition. But then there's also the part of me, it's because I'm getting older. I'm getting grumpier. I have to question, do we have to change it? Do we have to make it Ray instead, and so on and so forth? I know, right? Man, I'm getting older. I've earned the right to say, get off my lawn. I wake up, things hurt in places I've never hurt before. I see toys belonging to neighborhood children laying on my front lawn. I just don't know sometimes. It's weird. I'm grumpy about things I never thought I'd be grumpy about. And one of those things happens to be, why do we need to change things or fix things that aren't broken? Legends is non-canon. That's what they've said since day one. Yet we continue to watch things from the Legends whole timeline continue to get swept into play into this timeline. Anywho, I could probably ramble on and on about that, right? Forever. It's happened so many times.
I mean, I get where you're coming from. I really do. No, talking Star Wars, I don't think there's any chance in hell Simon Kinberg will direct any of these things. I think it's strictly a writer producer deal. His directorial bits did not go well. But speaking about Simon Kinberg, like let's be honest here. You don't necessarily hate the characters from the sequel trilogy. You hate how they were presented, how they were directed, how they were written. Had those characters been all the same characters, but the writing and the execution and the directing were different on them in that trilogy, you may in fact like them. You don't know, and this is coming from someone who is very critical of the sequel trilogy. Um, so I think having talent involved is important. I love the Simon Kinberg signing. Like, there are very few names over Simon Kinberg's that would have gotten me more excited while being realistic about who they can pull in. Some people are just like, oh, well, go pull in Christopher Nolan. Well, here's the fact: Star Wars is diminishing returns. And if you think Nolan is coming over to be micromanaged by Kathleen and Kennedy and company, that's never, ever, ever going to happen. So you have to be realistic on who you can get. People hear Simon Kinberg and they bring up X-Men Dark Phoenix and cough and hack because that was his directorial debut, and it's not well received. I'm
I
50-50 on
haven't
X.
seen all those movies. Was Dark Phoenix that bad?
I didn't mind it, but it by most, at least the standard seems to be most did not like it. Um, X-Men Apocalypse, it's about 50-50 among the fan base, but they bring up those two. And they're like, well, if you can't do that, then you're useless and you're out, and this is never going to go anywhere. But like, first of all, he's one of the writers on X-Men Days of Future Past, which is one of the best comic book movies of the last 20 years. He also produced Logan. He also produced all three Deadpool movies. And on top of that, he also did a Fantastic Four movie, which flunked as well. But on top of that, the most important thing he did is he's the co-creator of Star Wars Rebels. Everyone goes, "Oh, Dave Filoni, Dave Filoni, Dave Filoni." Dave Filoni did not create Star Wars Rebels alone. Simon Kinberg had a huge hand in that. Wrote a bunch of the episodes, was involved almost as much as Filoni was. And whether you like Rebels or not, the point of this is this means Simon Kinberg knows what it's like to work in that Lucasfilm Disney machine, knows the crap that's going to be thrown at him, and can still see a project through to the finish. That, I think, is important. I think the fact that he's a big Star Wars fan is just a bonus.
You know, whenever it comes to seeing any of these big names pop up, I think that we can easily write that off sometimes when it comes to a big franchise. Oh, it's Star Wars. They can just cut a big check and it'll be over and done with. But Star Wars, like you just said, has not had a good record over the last so many years. You know, we're skeptical as fans, and that's a sign of trouble. So I'm hoping that this news will eventually be able to inspire a little bit more confidence in some of us, but also we'll end up seeing something gradually come out that makes us think, okay, this is gonna happen. The PR work is PR work, and sometimes we've seen that even the PR side of things is just not handled correctly.
Dustin says, I give it 6 months before we get news. He has left the project. I hope not, but that's the life cycle lately. Yeah, you know what? There's just as much chance that happens as that it's successful. I do think the fact though that he has worked with them before, knows what to expect, is hugely helpful in this. Has experience getting it done. But we'll see how it plays out, right? Like that's the other thing is I want to be excited about this. I'm someone that believes you can still tell good new Star Wars stories with Rey as one of the main characters if you're setting it, 15, 20 years after the Rise of Skywalker. Like that's a whole new generation of characters that can be involved in a new story. Write the characters well, make them new and interesting and something for people to gravitate towards. They have a big chance there with that stuff. Apologies, guys. One moment.
Sounds like someone is not thrilled about this news. That's what I'm thinking. Say, no more. No more trilogies.
Yeah. Bo's like canceled again. I they just have such an opportunity to write new interesting characters. I think you got to figure out what your threat is as well, but I don't want to say it's a blank slate because it's not quite that, but it's as close to a blank slate as anyone's ever had. Um, and again, the fact that Simon Kinberg has delivered, I think that's important, and Star Wars Rebels is very successful for them. It's one of the best, most successful things in the Disney era of Star Wars, right? So,
honestly, I mean, we can't make a comparison to Disney at all time because that's decades and decades. But could the argument be made that Star Wars Rebels is one of the better sci-fi, maybe even animated series to drop in the last decade? I think decade.
well, I think it's way up there, like way, 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 way up there for sure.
It's popular. It's maintained its popularity. It didn't go forever. It's been done for quite some time. It went on to get what is essentially a live action spinoff. So
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think the smart thing for Lucasfilm to do now would be, now that Simon Kinberg himself has acknowledged it as being true, I think you need to stop with the whole playing coy and um, being tight-lipped about shit, and come out with a press release tomorrow or by Monday. You work on it over the weekend, saying yes, Simon Kinberg is in fact developing a Star Wars trilogy for us. Yes, it's episodes 10, 11, and 12. No, it's not episodes 10, 11, and 12. Here's the other talent currently involved in the project. We don't have a timetable on uh, when it'll be out, other than we hope in the 2020s. And that's all they need to do. Like, put some belief behind the news to reassure people, or naturally, the only thing anyone's going to think is, like one of the previous posters just said, well, it'll be 6 months till it's canceled, or until he departs the project, right? Like, reinstill some belief, be self aware of the market that you have created.
I I've not been the loudest critic of the institution, I guess we would say, of Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm's brought us some good stuff over time, including, I guess, over the last so many years. But I don't think I've ever been the person who writes a blank check of positivity and excitement. Now, I also haven't been I haven't been the loudest critic, but I don't write the blank check of excitement. You could argue against me, Sean, if you think that's necessary. But I, when it comes to seeing a new trilogy like this, I think I would go for it. I do think I would go for it because I miss going and seeing Star Wars in theaters. I think about it all the time. Not constantly, of course, but whenever I go see a movie, I'm thinking, I'd really like to be seeing a Star Wars movie today. Even if it's a movie I'm looking forward to a good deal. I think, remember when we were seeing Star Wars movies in theaters? Remember
Yeah,
when we were seeing this?
one a year for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. I would go, most of them I went and saw twice. I saw on opening night with a buddy of mine or someone else. And then the wife and I would go and we'd catch another showing of it, discount movie night, a week or two, a few weeks later, maybe. And then that all came to an end. I'm not saying that we need a Star Wars movie every year, because honestly, that was a little bit much. They
Um,
they could do it. They could do it. But
I
they really need to master what they're doing, because unlike, and this is where I'm going to catch your hate. Unlike Marvel, they haven't diversified their character set. That kind of goes into what you were saying a few moments ago. We need more characters. We need more storylines, more threads in play, not just the same stuff. Yeah. They started doing that with the spin-offs, but they really dropped the ball with the second one, and that's why we never got any more. I would love to see Star Wars get to the point where it again has a big, you know, film cinematic style universe. But considering we can't even see a movie come out, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon.
There's no damn reason we should not be able to get one Star Wars movie every year. It's not asking too much. I remember back, there was a time where we were like, it probably should be two a year. That's probably too lofty now, but I don't know why you can't do one a year if you're going to do trilogies and standalones and all sorts of different things. But yeah, like I just I wish I didn't like this news as much as I do because I'm so pro Simon Kinberg. Um, to have someone, writing a Star Wars trilogy who has a passion for Star Wars, has experience in it, um, that excites me quite a bit. Um, what doesn't excite me is being like, realistically, when's the earliest we're going to see one of these movies? Well, I'll tell you, it's late 2027. That's the earliest you're going to get it. More than likely 2028 or later. This thing's a long way off.
I
Like, I'm more excited about the Avengers movies
yeah,
at this point because they're really not all that long off.
considering you've not really been excited about anything else Marvel, with the exception of Deadpool and Wolverine. Marvel hater. Anyhow,
Sorry, I didn't have much of a chance to watch Hagatha.
it was good. It was good. Anyhow, I I'm really hoping they stay the course, and what they end up coming out with over the next few years works out, because from what I've most recently heard, Skeleton Crew isn't sounding too promising. Have you heard any different?
So I heard like a year ago, Skeleton Crew was screwed. um, but and they kept delaying it and delaying it for a reason. They moved two series releases up in front of it. Um, so for me, that had me thinking there's no hope for it. But the latest word I've heard is that it's actually pretty decent. They've managed to save a lot of it in the editing room. That's not going to blow anyone away, but that it's apparently solid. So that leaves my expectations basically at zero. Like, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad because I've heard two different ends of it, right? So
Where do we go from here? What do we think that this news leaves for the fan base as far as the future of Star Wars? I don't know if it's really much to claw onto at all. We've been hearing the Ray movie go back and forth, and the writer loss happened, and it's just kind of gone back to being an overall discouraging time as a Star Wars fan, if you ask me.
see,
Is
I think it's been that way for a while now,
yeah,
but that lately there's been some signs of peaking out. Now, whether those signs can become reality, then we'll have to wait and see. But we have
but nothing's
skeleton.
happening overnight. Nothing.
No, no, it's gonna be a progressive thing. Like, Skeleton Crew starts in less than a month. Maybe, just maybe, it ends up being okay. Maybe not something people are blown away by, but people go, you know what? That was decent. That wasn't bad. And then you have Andor 2 next year, which I am 100% confident in. I think it will blow people away. Tony Gilroy is a genius.
Was this supposed to come out sooner than that?
At one point in time, yes. It got delayed with strike stuff too.
Everything else.
Yeah. So Andor 2 is next year. We believe there'll be some sort of Tales mini show next year, like there's been the last 2 years with Tales of the Jedi and then Tales of the Empire. Um, so that's what we know is coming next year. In 2026, we believe Ahsoka season 2 will be released during that year because it probably won't be ready in time for 2025, since they're just going to be filming it in 2025. Um, and then obviously The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is the first theatrical release back. And then who knows after that, right? That's what we know is somewhat close between now and the middle of 2026. And then after that, it's like the ball's up in the air. If this movie trilogy has swallowed the Ray movie, which is what I believe has happened, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, we get confirmation on that soon. Um, then it's going to take priority, right? There's going to be a lot of work put into that. Filoni will continue to work away at his too. You have James Mangold working on his Dawn of the Jedi thing, which sounds like it's getting further along in pre-production. Um, that kind of sounds like it might be like if you're going to be a Star Wars fan in the next 5 to 8 years, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get probably one live action show a year moving forward, an animated thing here or there. And in terms of the movies, you're going to get The Mandalorian Grogu. You're going to get this new trilogy whenever it comes out. And you're going to get Dawn of the Jedi. Like the Taika Waititi thing's not going to happen, people. Like it's not. That's done. The Feige thing is done. If you haven't caught on yet, the Ryan Johnson thing is definitely not going to happen, which sucks because they could probably use someone as talented as he is right now. Um,
It's funny you mention that because, as far as Taika Waititi, because I just had like a post pop up for me earlier today. What did they call it? The decline of or of him, or the rise and fall of him, or basically the argument is that the fans have turned against him, and I guess that comes into how people regard his work. I don't know everything he's ever done very well. I've certainly seen some of his projects, but here we are, right? Who's to say what a Star Wars project that will, and something like that, a new one coming out from him would look like at this point in time?
yeah, I don't think you are getting anything from him. Like I said, you're not getting the Ryan Johnson thing either. Guess what? That Lando thing everybody thinks is going to happen. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, more than likely not going to happen. Um, the Patty Jenkins Rogue Squadron thing's not happening. Like it's a lot of unofficial, but more than likely canceled stuff out there, right? So like, there's definitely room to do a trilogy. I just don't know what you're going to do in terms of release and being able to keep people's interest. Like, are you doing Mandalorian and Grogu? Like, for me now, Tommy, this means until I hear that it's not the Ray movie that got swallowed by this trilogy, for me, this means you have that trilogy by Simon Kinberg, who'll be writing and producing it. You have The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is almost done filming. You have Dawn of the Jedi by James Mangold, and a few months ago, I wouldn't even have continued to mention this one because for me, it felt like it was unlikely to happen. But it seems like things just continue to go really well in pre-production and to a point where they think they're going to film next year. Um, so then you have that one, but you also have the Filoni movie, right? So right there is 6 movies, and I personally believe, I know there's rumors about a bunch of other ones that could happen and movies that people want to happen. But I personally believe that trilogy and those three movies that I just mentioned is what you're going to get out of your future of Star Wars. Whether it ends up being your cup of tea or not, who knows?
I really wish we could go back to Solo and someone drop into the writing room or the production room, whatever, and just tell them, stop. Don't screw up. Don't basically make them have to pay for the movie twice. I stand by that. If that didn't get so messed up, we'd be in a totally different position right now as Star Wars fans, and they would have put out a bunch of more movies. I'm not saying that that was the source of all their problems, but that certainly seems to have been the time when all more problems started flowing out into the public. Doesn't mean things weren't existing in the background, but I would have been ignorantly blissful to not have known about some of their struggles. Not every movie need be perfect, of course. Not everyone's going to like every movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of warnings they could give if you could go back in time, but that's not particularly realistic, right? So,
Nope, not even a little bit. I I don't know, man. You know, being a Star Wars fan is it's crazy. Like you want to be excited, but the realist in me doesn't let me be excited. This news does nothing for me right now. I will not be excited until again I see a teaser or a trailer or something like that. I mean, I guess if leaks or big chunks of news started dropping out and they started putting some like behind the scenes stuff out, maybe. But the last few Star Wars projects have not aroused excitement in me until close to release.
and I feel like that's the overwhelming sentiment from the fan base too, which is why they are in a little bit of um, a different place at this time, right? Like, I don't want to say it has to be a hit or anything, but like, they do got to get their projects right because at the moment, other than these movies that seem to be coming, the only thing you can definitively say that you know we're going to get at this point are Skeleton Crew, Andor 2, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and Ahsoka 2, which is deep in pre-production. Other than those projects, there's nothing else in my mind that's definitive.
Still wish they would change that Mandalorian and yeah, and Mandalorian Grogu movie title. But I think that one's here to stay. What do you think?
Unfortunately, I think you're right, which is terrible because it's an awful title. Like, it's
How's a kid supposed to say to their friends that they're going and seeing that movie? I'm gonna go see the Mandalorian and
well, to be
Grogu.
clear, it's Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh well, at least there's that, right?
It
It's
is
not.
Star Wars first.
It's not Mandalorian and Grogu Star Wars story.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, the Star Wars story shit was so dumb. Well,
There were worse things they could have done, but it never caught on for me. Never did.
there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tommy and I, 40 minutes of talk and speculation on the new Star Wars trilogy that has been basically confirmed now by Simon Kinberg himself. Let's see Lucasfilm finally, put their money where their mouth is and support one of these things in the public now. I really do think it's positive. I think the fact that he's a producer too helps because he's someone that gets stuff done. I think it could have been far worse, but I do think that this announcement is going to ruffle some feathers of fans that are waiting for other things that may now no longer happen because this project's happening.
We'll just have to get over it.
Indeed. Indeed. Anyways, for Tommy, I'm Sean. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening impromptu live stream. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all to keep up to date with all of our future content. Have a great weekend. We'll keep our ear to the ground to see if more comes out on this news. But until then, we'll see you next time when the Empire calls.